But after Lippi wanted to me, and together with Conte, there was a lot of journalists and newspaper and wrote and a lot of time. Hakan Sükür is good player. He's gonna come again in Italy. But we spoke to Lippi, but not Inter Milan, but for Juventus.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
Zidane and was play in Juventus, 99, I think so. And I went to Torino again, and same city and different team. And Torino, and a couple of years after, I came for Juventus. We didn't deal again, but there was a lot of story. And there was a Henry, and French player. But for Lippi, I came to Inter Milan.
It was always Marcello Lippi that liked you.
Yes, there was a lot of quality players. You remember, and Ronaldo and Vieri, Zamorano, and there was an 8-9 striker players. Robbie Keane, Recoba, and there was a lot of quality players. When I went in Italy, I saw it's like this because before the Inter and Milan, and we spoke together, Breda?
Breda,
we spoke together with him and Breda.
Okay, so the AC Milan sporting director.
Yes, sporting director, yeah.
Let's just touch on some of the coaches that you were under. Besides Fatih Terim, there was Hector Cooper, Marcello Lippi, as you said, also by other managers in Italy, Nedo Sonetti, Lido Vieri at Torino. In your first time in Italy, in the Italian league, Renzo Olivieri and Daniel Passarella at Parma as well, before going with Graham Souness at Blackburn in the English league. You were in talks with Juventus when the Bianconeri were coached by Marcello Lippi in 1998, 99, around that era. You also had already played for Torino, their crosstown rivals, a couple of years previous to this. So Italian football had already seen you, and they were looking for a more mature Hakan to come back. And at that time, you were scoring so many goals for Galatasaray. And we will go now to some of your highlights in Turkey. Such a glittering career in Turkish club football, where you were part of that Galatasaray team that won back-to-back 4 years consecutively. Yes. And firstly, let's talk about that first spell at Galatasaray in the early 90s, after the beginning of your career at Sakaryaspor. And that's your hometown, is that right?
Yes, hometown.
And then you went from there to Bursaspor and then to Galatasaray. Yes. And Galatasaray built a brand new team based on young players at the beginning of the 1990s. The club mixed youth academy players and young, promising Turkish players like yourself. And there was Hakan Sükür, Okan Buruk in the 1992 squad that had also Arif Erdem, Tugay Kerimoglu, Bülent Korkmaz, Suat Kaya. Together, these players form Gala.
Emre Belezoğlu, Emre? And
yeah, of course. Inter Milan. Yeah. Yeah. So a great squad. And this all contributed to Turkey qualifying for Euro 96 for the first time. And these guys went on to win the UEFA Cup together in the year 2000. They were also part of the World Cup team of 2002 together. But when Galatasaray signed you in 1992, they effectively bought you as a replacement player for an outgoing striker, Tanju Çolak.
Yes.
Who won the European Golden Shoe. He got into the Ballon d'Or top 10 and scored 145 goals for Galatasaray. So at the age of 21, you had a lot of expectation, big shoes to fill. And those memorable goals I've seen of you at Galatasaray, when you lobbed the keeper against Bursaspor, your composed finish against Altay, where you had to slot the ball in between the defenders and the goalkeeper that were standing on the goal line. So very intelligently taken goals.
Yes.
You were well known, so well known throughout Turkey. But there were some big tests which announced you on the group stage. So let's talk about the UEFA Champions League.
Yeah.
For those of you that are younger than Hakan and myself, and the European Cup was once known as what we know now, the UEFA Champions League. That Champions League format was brought in with groups in 1992-93. But in 1993, you won your first piece of silverware as a Galatasaray player in that 1992-93 Turkish Super League. You beat Fenerbahce by just 1 point, and you scored 19 league goals.
Yes.
And 26 in all competitions.
Yeah.
On the other side of Europe, Alex Ferguson and Manchester United, they won the English Premier League by 10 points over Aston Villa. So Galatasaray is tasked with confronting one of the all-time best ever English clubs in just the second round of the UEFA Champions League. So this was a playoff against United, which would decide who would qualify for just one of two Champions League groups.
Yes.
So back then, there were only two groups. The teams had to play off in preliminaries, a first round home and away, and then a second round home and away leg. So this was considered by many in English football as one of the spiciest contests in Manchester United's illustrious history. So Galatasaray, full of young talent, they knock out Manchester United, filled with players like Peter Schmeichel, Dennis Irwin, Steve Bruce, Gary Neville, Brian Robson, Paul Ince, Ryan Giggs, Roy Keane, and the great Eric Cantona. Spectacular.
Yes.
And the first leg finished 3-3. And then Manchester United and Alex Ferguson had to go to Istanbul.
Ali Samian, yes.
Yes. There is a documentary called Welcome to Hell, the English title, because it's from the viewpoint, the perspective of Manchester United players and management going to Istanbul, because it was so fiery in that stadium. You had the advantage on away goals. You didn't need to win at home. Yes. And so Alex Ferguson had to bring his team, as you said, to the Ali Samian Stadium for the second leg. So he even said in the warm-up before the game, there was a threatening attitude, just the feeling, the atmosphere of what the Gala fans were shouting, were intimidating these players. And even Roy Keane, it was a nerve-wracking experience for Roy Keane, who was the hard man of English football. The stadium was ablaze, firecrackers. If you haven't seen this, you have to go and look up the highlights of these two legs, because also yourself, I saw some of your highlights, your personal highlights in these games. And Peter Schmeichel made some very good saves when you were shooting a goal.
Saved is not is the correct words, because I missed. And there was an easy position, but I've shot it and Schmeichel not save. And my mistake, I missed the position. Was enough and 0-0 and after the 3-3, but I missed the two position. We eliminated the Manchester United. It was in very, very good time and story of Galatasaray.
Yeah, a big party atmosphere in the stands, and it was a funeral in the Manchester United dressing room.
Yes, of course, because they were a great team, and you told a lot of quality players' name, and I remember a lot of good players, and Eric Cantona, Ryan Giggs, and there was a lot of great players, and English football and all of time, and maybe best team in Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly. And also Galatasaray had a very good but underrated team. Kubilay Turkulmaz, Switzerland's all-time top scorer. He scored at Old Trafford. Arif Erdem, who, like you, is also now based in the United States of America. Yes. And if you watch that documentary, Welcome to Hell, which you can find on many platforms, including YouTube, you can see Eric Cantona. He had to be held back during the game because he was so angry. And Galatasaray completed the biggest mission in the history of Turkish club football until that time. Yes. And, even Sir Alex Ferguson, he quoted this: you cannot underestimate anyone in Europe anymore. I think Manchester United were winning 2-0 at Old Trafford. He said, if we were 2-0 against Milan, we would have passed. But against this Galatasaray team, somehow you were too tenacious. So in the end, it ended 3-3. All goals were scored in England, and Galatasaray went through on away goals and denied that great Manchester United club team the second successive year that they did not qualify for the UEFA Champions League. And you took that space, and Cantona was at war with everyone, including the policemen in some of the reports. In the end, Galatasaray, they faced Barcelona, Spartak Moscow, and Monaco in the group stage.
Group stage, yeah.
And Barcelona, that was the year Barcelona lost to AC Milan in the final 4-0.
Yes.
The very next season, it got much more intense because Galatasaray qualified for the group stage again and ended up in a group with Manchester United.
Yes, of course.
And Gothenburg and Barcelona again. And you got your precious first group stage win, and it came against Barcelona.
Barcelona 2-1. Is right. We won the 2-1 in my stadium in Ali Samian. And I remember, and it was nice atmosphere in stadium. And Arif Erdem and me and score and penalty goal, and we won 2-1. There was and Barcelona score is Romario, I think so. Romario, great players, yes. But when we played it was very difficult for Barcelona players. There was very quality players.
Ronald Koeman,
Romario, and Stoichkov, I think so.
Stoichkov, Guardiola, Jordi Cruyff, Vaquero,
yes,
Ferrer.
great team. But field was very bad, and they didn't play. They didn't passing work in the game. But it was in my team advantage and field position. But we won 2-1.
Well, you play two halves because even if the field is not in good condition, the players like Romario are the world's best players. They have to condition themselves for this kind of challenge.
Also, we were and before the game, we had only one chance. If we play together and struggling and fighting, and field is very bad, we can win. Don't worry. We spoke. I remember in dressing room, and we spoke like this. But we played together and all together and struggling together, and we won. It was very, very great night, and for us and Galatasaray story also.
A huge night. It sounds to me like, have you seen the movie The Gladiator with Russell Crowe?
Yes, a couple of times, not only one.
It's when he has that magnificent speech, a colossal speech where he tells everyone we have to stick together. So that's what it sounds like that you and your teammates spoke about before the game. Romario made it 1-0 after 15 minutes. You scored a penalty with in the second half. And then it was Arif Erdem who turned it around for 2-1 with 2 minutes left. So guys, you have to go and look up these highlights as well, so you can see what Barcelona was like before the Barcelona that you know now. And you can see this up-and-coming Galatasaray side and get a historical look at Turkish club football and obviously the nation's biggest club. So the two goal scorers on that day, both you and Arif, are second-generation Kosovar immigrants, yes?
Yes, also. I came, my father originally in Kosovo, in Pristina. My mother in Skopje and Macedonia. And, Yugoslavia in part of the different one. And, and Kosovo and Macedonia and other one, and Serbia and Hrvatska and a lot of and different country now. Arif Erdem. We came, not Arif, but my family and came from back in Turkey and from Kosovo and other city. Is originally, yes, we came over there.
Great. I'm also a second-generation immigrant, but to Australia.
Yes. Australia also, Christian Vieri, Australia, you know?
Exactly. Sometimes I see him in Milano walking around in Brera area, up and down Corso Garibaldi.
Yes, and he's living still in Milano. I know him, yeah.